Welcome back to the Between Breaths podcast. Jacko here, and I've got a pulse oximeter in my hand which measures blood oxygen saturation. And those that are watching on the video will be able to see. I'm pointing at the camera. We're going to look at getting that bottom number into hypoxic ranges, which is under 91%. But combining that, or looking at why, combining that with resistance training has been shown or could potentially improve our hypertrophy muscle gains with a capital G and a big Z too. This is the Between Best podcast, and I'm going to be sharing with you everything that the research has shown combined with my personal experience and experimentation about how we can actually work on our muscle size, our hypertrophy, in a more effective and efficient way, potentially with the use of breath holding, because of the link that a number of studies that I'm going to go into and show you have clearly pointed out the improvements in muscle hypertrophy response to hypoxic training when combined with resistance work. So before we get into the podcast, I do want to let you know about some of the certifications, the Oxygented certifications. Me as a master instructor and mentor with the Oxygented, I run the Oxygented certifications here in the UK, and we have one coming up next weekend. There are still, as I record this, there's still a couple of places available as I record this now, but a couple of weeks ahead. But if you're interested and you are based in the Midlands or Nottingham area, or willing to travel, 3 days, the 9th to the 11th of February, the full 3-day Oxyvantage certification with myself and fellow master instructor Georgie Lawler. She specializes also in female breathing, so another fascinating area that we're going to take a deep dive into. You get the 3 days training, you get all the online support and access to the full Oxygenvantage instructor portal, and with me as your mentor, ongoing mentor group sessions every month to help you not just pass your certification, but help you to improve and carry on the development as a coach. So that's on the 9th to 11th of February in Nottingham. And then also, if you are outside of the UK or you prefer to learn online for the flexibility, I'm teaching over 8 weeks, starting on the 2nd of April, teaching it online. The course content and everything is exactly the same, and all of your support and all of your access and everything is entirely the same. It's just that you learn through one session every week for 8 weeks. That's our starting on the 2nd of April online. And then finally, for the first half of the year, we've got a retreat certification. That means you're doing a 3-day retreat with me. It's done at a retreat centre in Scotland, in a beautiful woodland area just north of Glasgow, on the 17th to 19th of May. And as part of it, you get your whole certification, you get those 3 days of training, you get all the online support, and everything again is exactly the same. But included within it is all of your accommodation, all of your food, all of your access to the retreat facilities, so the sauna, the ice bath, the jacuzzis, and also a little bit of evening banter with Jacko. So it's obviously a little bit more expensive because all of that is included in your price. And there are a much smaller group for that one, much more limited places, as it is being done as a more intimate retreat. So we get to go into a little bit more detail. And the details for all of those are at probreathwork.com/certification. And the links will be in the show notes. So 9th to 11th of February in Nottingham, the 17th and 19th of May in Scotland, and then online over 8 weeks is on the 2nd of April. And I'll just thank the podcast. What's happening with me? Where's the podcast sponsors before we get stuck into this episode? So Ketone IQ from HVMN, mentioned this a number of times. A product that I've been using and I was using before they started sponsoring the podcast, and a product that I continue to use. Helps with brain health, helps with focus, concentration, helps with sleep, and then also for those involved in endurance sports, a great fuel source that you can add to your electrolytes. And rather than the ketone is an energy source, is a fuel source. So rather than having to use like sugary drinks to fuel your run, we're able to use the ketones, and I just add a little shot of this, or from the bigger bottles, the more concentrated stuff, a shot of this into the backpack, along with some hydration salts, and we're good to go. And that's something that will be fueling my endurance events this year. I've got 2 of those coming up. Snowdon 24 again, coming back to the mountain. That's the 14th of July. You're very welcome, and I would love some people, like last time, come and do a rep with me. I did 6 last time on the day, and then 9 in total, but 6 on the day, and I'm aiming to beat that. So come and join for one of 7, or I'd love to be able to do 8. The winner did 8 last year. I do wonder whether I could do 8. I do feel like I could do 7. Come and join me for one. And if you want to go slow, come to a latter one towards the end, because they tend to be very slow towards the end. And then I'm also taking part in the Aruri Marathon. That's the hardest marathon in the whole of the UK around Snowdonia. And that's in October. So these are fueling that for me. The HVMN are sponsoring the podcast, and they give a 20% discount code to all of the Between Breaths podcast listeners. And that code is simply Jacko. And if you use, follow the link in the show notes, hvmn.com/Jacko, then the discount is automatically applied to your products. So go check them out if you haven't yet. I'm highly recommended by Jacko. Right, let's get into this podcast about hypoxia for hypertrophy gains. We enter this world taking our first breath, and sadly, we leave this place taking our last. And what I want to do with this podcast is to explore what happens between those breaths. I'm David Jackson, Jacko, and this is the Between Breaths podcast. So this is something I wanted to do a full podcast on, because a number of you, literally thousands of you, were very interested when I posted a few bits and pieces about the potential use of breath holding and hypoxic work for hypertrophy. And it genuinely came off of a selfie in a gym mirror with like good lighting, where I took it purely and genuinely, well, probably partly because I thought some people would be like, people would be like, oh yeah, like what's this? And I know that it would get people interested in breathing, breath work and stuff, and the work that we're doing. So there was a bit of that. But I genuinely was sort of surprised, and I was like, because I just train at home. I don't train in the gym. And I was away with work and just trained in the hotel gym. And afterwards I was like, geez, for someone that doesn't do specifically hypertrophy work, and someone that is doing a lot of running and endurance work, I'm holding on to muscle mass that more so than I would have thought, was my initial inkling. And I thought, I wonder if some of the, because I had a lot of my breath holding integrated into even my resistance training, not just like running and stuff. So I was like, I wonder whether the sort of breath holding work, the challenge that's having on the tissues that are working, the drops in oxygen and the accumulation of CO2 and potential lactate buildup, like, has that any implication on hypertrophy response for the muscles when we're working them? And someone sent me a message on Instagram, and they slipped into the DMs, and they were like, they sent me a link to a study about hypoxia and hypertrophy. And it was like, yeah, if you do your resistance training in hypoxia or combined with hypoxic work, then we see an increase in muscle hypertrophy response. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And so delve a little deeper and have uncovered, in fact, an awful lot of studies. So I want to just pitch a couple, 3 in particular, that are sort of jump out at me. One is literally, if you just put hypoxia, hypertrophy, those 2 words into Google Scholar, you will see there are, I don't know, a lot of studies. So let's start with the most recent one that I've wanted to pull up. 2019 study. This stated that, in conclusion, the synergic effect of the combination of strength resistance training with normobaric hypoxia produces better and greater adaptations and beneficial physiological changes of the muscle tissue, which shows favorably phenotype changes in skeletal muscle hypertrophy. That was 2019 study from the Biomedica, the training of strength resistance in hypoxia, effect on muscle hypertrophy was the title of that. And then 2015, serum growth hormone concentrations after exercise were significantly higher in the hypoxic group than the normoxic group. So normoxic means just normoxia, normal levels of oxygen within the blood, for example, is 95 to 99%, whereas hypoxic is anything less than 91. That was from the Clinical Physiology Functioning Imaging paper, the title, Effects of Resistance Training Under Hypoxic Conditions on Muscle Hypertrophy and Strength. And then final one I'll quote for you, International Journal of Sports Physiology and Performance from 2010. It's like, wow, it's like 14 years old. So we've known for a while. The effects of exercise training regimes under hypoxia are likely mediated by moderate production of reactive oxygen species, promoting tissue growth hormone secretion stimulated by the intramuscular accumulation of metabolic subproducts such as lactate, testosterone secretion in Leydig cells, and additional recruitment of type 2 muscle fibers. These studies suggest that the ability of resistance exercise to elicit muscle hypertrophy involves not only mechanical stress, but also metabolic, hormonal, and neuronal factors. And it's like, okay, I heard some words there that maybe I recognize, and then I heard a lot of others of what does that actually mean, and what does it look like in reality? So, but like picking up on that last one, like there is more than just the mechanical stress eliciting hypertrophy responses, and this is something we've known for a while. And what we're sort of seeing from all of these studies is going like there is a response in the muscle tissue related to the hypoxic condition when they had a group doing their resistance training in hypoxia comparing to a group doing the same resistance training in normoxia, or normal oxygen levels. Then the group that were doing it in hypoxia had a greater increase in their muscle hypertrophy response. And then some of the reasons behind that last one was suggesting that this being to do with the accumulation of some of the metabolic byproducts that we get. And we know when we're in hypoxia, we're going to get more of those. And particularly when we're doing breath holding, as an example, we're going to get more of those metabolic byproducts, more of those things like the lactate, the CO2, all that are stressing the muscle tissue from the acidity side of things. And then the other two referenced increases in growth hormone. So if I'm getting some sort of signaling from the muscle tissue that is creating a spike in growth hormone post session, then that is going to help with my muscle hypertrophy gains. So it sort of seems to make a lot of sense in that, like, we're doing some mechanical stressing of the muscle tissue, but then we're also then I guess chemically stressing the muscle tissue as well, and that's we're getting a greater response from doing that rather than just doing the mechanical stress of lifting the weight. So what I want to go on to sort of suggest and look at is going, okay, so how are they creating hypoxia? We know that hypoxia in terms of blood oxygen saturation is when those levels of oxygen within the blood drop below 91%. What were they doing in these studies? What can we actually, is it applicable to me? And how can I, or is it possible for me to utilize some of this? And also, like, what have you been doing, Jackie? Like, tell us, give us a bit of an idea. So big thing to point out, like many things, is we have to make some like links and not guesses, but like sort of assumptions. But we've got to link a couple of things together here. So it's important to point out that the way they were creating hypoxia in these studies tended to be manipulating the percentage of oxygen that somebody was breathing. So either with a mask or they're training in a chamber where they're reducing the percentage of oxygen. I think it was typically something like normal levels is like 20.9%, like 21%, and then they were reducing it down to like, is it 15 or 16, something like that. So reducing the percentage of oxygen in the air that the people were inhaling, and have two groups. One group doing it in a chamber or with a mask, they're manipulating those levels of percentage levels of oxygen, and the other group just training normally, but doing the same resistance training work. And typically it was like moderate resistance, like 10 to 12 reps, multiple sets, that type of thing, not the maximal strength training. And so for most of us, we aren't able to use a chamber or a mask that is manipulating the levels of oxygen that I'm breathing. But so that's how they were ensuring that people that were training in hypoxic conditions. Now, what we know with breath holding is it's very easy to get someone to drop into hypoxia by doing some medium to strong breath holds. And I can do my breath holding at the same time as I'm doing my physical exertion, and it's going to be even easier once I've worked through the mental aspects of being able to push through the sensations of discomfort with breath holding. Then I'm going to be able to get into hypoxia relatively comfortable. It's always a feeling of discomfort. Now, I have done some work previously a number of years ago on like a watt bike at the equivalent altitude of, so they've reduced the amount of oxygen in the air that was equivalent to what it would be like at the top of Mount Everest, and it was significantly harder, really hard to exercise at that intensity. At that sort of level, and it won't have been that's very, very, very high altitude equivalent. They wouldn't have needed to do this in these studies. So I have experience of both, and when you're in a chamber where they're controlling the levels of oxygen, you get out of breath very quickly. But I have to say, it isn't as challenging as making that hypoxia happen for yourself by holding the breath. But I'll explain later as to why I think there's some reasons to actually work on that in terms of our mental ability to deal with stresses. And the other thing is with breath holding, we are also not only dropping our oxygen levels, we're increasing our CO2 levels, and that's going to play a role in this for sure. That being said, trying to do some resistance work in a chamber that's creating the hypoxia is going to be my belief and understanding from having experienced the two, is going to be easier to create the hypoxia, and you can just have that hypoxia for longer than when you're trying to create the hypoxia with breath holding, because it's going to be intermittent hypoxia with breath holding. You're going to hold your breath, you're going to get hypoxic, but then you're going to recover your breathing, and then you're going to do your next set with another breath hold. So it's very much, when we do it with breath holding, it's much more intermittent hypoxic training, and there's lots been done for that for things like endurance work, but studies on that for hypertrophy I haven't come across those yet. So we're making a bit of a link here to say, okay, these studies are showing if you can spend some time in hypoxia during your resistance training, you're going to get a greater response in terms of muscle hypertrophy. I know I can't, and I know you can't get access to a chamber or a mask that's going to manipulate the levels of oxygen that you're breathing. But what I do know you can do is you can hold your breath. And I know that when you hold your breath, you can get yourself into hypoxic states quite relatively comfortably when you get used to it. And two things that we're going to get from breath holding that you're not going to get from working with a hypoxic mask or a hypoxic chamber is that you're having to create that yourself, and you're having to deal with the mental response to the breath hold and the discomfort, and your diaphragm's going to be contracting, so that's getting a bit of a workout as well. And mentally, you're pushing through some boundaries that are a real physiological stress on the system, but also it's a mental stress, and you're getting to deal with that and learn how to mentally get comfortable with discomfort. And part of that, and the other thing is, but part of it and linked to it, is the accumulation of CO2 within your muscle tissues and within your blood and lungs, of carbon dioxide building up when you're holding your breath. You're not letting the carbon dioxide out. That's going to have an effect on those metabolic byproducts. It's going to increase the lactate. It's going to increase the acidity within the muscle tissue when we do repeated breath holds with our sets of resistance work. And we can then expect or make a theory that, well, if some of these studies were showing those metabolic byproducts and lactate were increasing our hormonal response and increasing secretion of growth hormone, then why wouldn't that be the case even more so with all of that buildup of CO2 within the muscle tissue and the blood? So that's sort of where I'm coming at it from and where I'm understanding it from and where I'm utilizing it from. I think that their breath holding is very easy and usable to do, accessible. That's the word I was looking for. Very accessible. But then you're getting these other bits. You're getting the mental side of it, and you're getting the CO2 side of it, and you're going to be getting some diaphragm contractions that is helping with that connection to building up that diaphragm strength. So there are other multiple benefits to it as well. And it starts, like, what does it look like in practice? It starts very simply with, or a safety warning. If you're pregnant, you shouldn't be doing strong breath holding, but you probably shouldn't be doing strong training, but you shouldn't be doing strong breath holding. If you've got any heart conditions or issues with blood pressure, anything like that, or taking any medications for your heart, like, you shouldn't breath holds like this. They're strong. They are a stressor on the system. So we shouldn't be doing them if we have any medical conditions. Yeah, but for everyone else that's fit, healthy, and well, they're totally safe to do, and they're a great addition and to be integrated into some of our training. As I've been doing, and I know a lot of you have been following along a lot of this stuff. So, in simple terms, what it most looks like is performing them after an exhale rather than on full lungs, because we're going to get to hypoxia quicker when we perform them on an exhale. That's because if I take a breath in, fill my lungs with air, I've got oxygen in there. And then when I hold my breath and then I start doing my training session and doing my set, oxygen from the blood is going to go into the tissues, it's going to get used, and then the blood's getting empty, but then I've got a load of oxygen in my lungs that's then going to go into the blood and go into the tissue, and it's going to delay the effect of getting low levels of oxygen in the blood and in the tissues. Whereas if I do my breath hold after a normal exhale, pinch my nose, hold my breath, then I'm going to be holding on relatively empty lungs, so that when oxygen leaves my blood to go into the tissues, and then it can't then be replenished because I'm holding my breath basically on empty lungs. That's why with the Oxygen Advantage we teach exhale breath holds, and it's why a lot of the studies by people like the French scientist Xavier Warren's, all done on empty lungs or exhale breath holds. We get to hypoxia quicker, and we can get some stronger hypoxia, so we get a greater stimulus, greater adaptations. So I might typically take something where I can comfortably perform sort of 10, 12, up to 20 reps. So that could be a push-up, squats, something of relatively comfortable load. And then I do a breath in and out, and I do my reps. I'm aiming for 20 reps, say, and I hold my breath. And I might be able to do all 20 press-ups on a breath hold. Fine. I let go, or if you're doing something like press-ups and your hands are on the floor, your hands are holding some weights or something, obviously you can't pinch your nose. You have to choose to close your throat off and hold your breath that way. I personally find that even more challenging. So it's another challenge from that respect. But there might be, you might find that you can't hold your breath for the whole 20 reps. So what you do is you breathe in, you breathe out, you hold your breath, you start your set on a breath hold, and maybe you do 15 reps of your push-ups, and then you could stop there, and that's also fine. Or you could continue to finish the other 5 reps you've got to do to make up your 20, if that's what you set yourself out to do, and try to control your breathing after that breath hold. That makes sense? So the breath hold could dictate how many reps I do, or I could choose to do, I've got a set number of reps I'm going to do. This is me integrating it into, okay, I want to do 3 sets of 15 or 20 or 18 or whatever it is, 12. You choose, I go, right, I'm going to do 3 sets of 12 on this exercise. I start the set 1 on a breath hold. I get to 8 reps and I've still got 4 left to do. You carry on, you let yourself breathe, but try to control your breathing response. It's good practice of that whilst you finish the remaining reps in that set. In your recovery period, just relax, nasal breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, maybe get on the floor and work on a little bit of mechanics, but you want to be calming and regulating the nervous system so you're ready to go again, and you start the next one on a breath hold as well. So you can just start the set on a breath hold. It really is as simple as that. The other thing that we can do that I find quite useful is performing a couple of breath holds, or a set of sort of conditioning breath holds, which then is going to get you hypoxic at the beginning of the session. And so you're going to go through these bouts of hypoxia and you're going to come back when you're recovering. But if you say did 1 set of 5 reps on I like on a watt bike or a salt bike, or some sort of CV equipment where you could just do it jogging or doing squats or something, where you may be doing a breath hold every minute or every 45 seconds or every 30 seconds, depending on your ability and how intense you want to make it. But I personally, for example, have been doing this for a while, so I do sort of like the repeat sprint conditioning breath holds on my assault bike, where a few minutes to warm up, and then I do 5 or 6 in a set of exhale, hold the breath, and go for it. And they may last 6, 8, 10, 12 seconds. We're getting better and they get longer, but I'm doing them every 30 seconds. So if I do a breath hold for 12 seconds, I was going to do terrible math there. If I did a breath hold for 12 seconds, then I've got 18 seconds rest, for example, and then I'd be going again. And I do, if I did a set of 6 breath holds every 30 seconds, it takes just 3 minutes. I definitely get up-regulated from the challenge of the breath hold, so that's good for the start of the workout. Obviously, once I've sort of done my general warm-up. And then I'm also getting into some intermittent hypoxia during that, and it can get quite strong by the end of 5 or 6 reps like that, which then leads me then into that resistance work. And just to remember again, like, not heavy lifting. There's no point in adding this. This is not going to benefit your like heavy lifting and max strength lifting. Maybe this is like accessory work at the end of the session, or for me, I do a lot of endurance work. So my rep ranges that I work in are typically 10 up to 20 reps on things. So for me, it's quite comfortable it's relatively comfortable loads, and or body weight exercises, and I integrate the breath hold in to the start of the rep. That's it in a nutshell. And you can, where's my pulse oximeter? For those watching on the video, a pulse oximeter, you could pop a pulse oximeter on your finger. It doesn't, you might do your breath hold. So I'm like 98%, which is good. Normal is 95 to 99. And you'll be able to see and track, does the bottom number, does your blood oxygen saturation drop below 91%? That's you in some hypoxia. During your rest and recovery periods, it's going to come back up. So it's intermittent hypoxia, but you're getting some hypoxia integrated into your resistance training, which these studies are showing if you combine hypoxia and resistance training, we're getting greater improvements in muscle hypertrophy. A lot of people that have been doing this with me, following online and stuff, like report back, like they report the same things I have in terms of that muscle size, that hypertrophy, like an increase in the pump, like an increase in literally the muscle pump that you feel when you're doing that type of training. And and people reporting like other things like it's helping them to be able to get better at like then controlling their breathing in response to the breath holding and stuff afterwards. So it starts to open up your eyes to other things that your breath and your breath training can do. But this might be a starting point for some people. I think the final little thing that I was going to say on this was that there was a little protocol, a simple protocol that I put together to make it a little bit more fun as well. Oh no, sorry. What I was going to say was that the research showing that link between hypoxia and hypertrophy, what we're doing is creating the hypoxia through a different method or different mechanism, if you like. In the studies they were using that restriction or reduction in available oxygen in the air, whereas we're using a breath hold, so a different method to get to the same place. It would be lovely for us to get some studies done on breath holding and breath holding creating hypoxia for hypertrophy, and comparing those. That would be great. It'd be really interesting to see, wouldn't it? But I, for one, enjoy integrating it, and it makes my training a bit more interesting anyway. Whereas, sometimes exercises can be just a bit boring to do. Do it with a breath hold, it just adds a bit of a challenge, takes your mind somewhere else. That's another reason why I enjoy and do it. And I, for one, won't wait for there to be a study to prove it. I'm going to do it and experiment on myself anyway, and feel the benefits before someone tells me it's a good thing to do. So yeah, this little protocol I worked on to make it a little bit more fun was a 5-5-5-5, which is what? So 4 lots of 5. It was a breath hold, 1 breath, breath hold, 1 breath. So 5-5-5-5, meaning 20 reps. You need to pick an exercise you can sort of comfortably do 20 reps for. And you do your first 5 reps, and it's continuous, but you do first 5 reps on a breath hold. And then you do reps 6 to 10 with just taking 1 recovery breath. So it needs to be slow and controlled. And then you do reps 11 to 15 on a breath hold. And then you do your last final 5 reps to make up your 20, and it's continuous. You don't stop in between on just 1 recovery breath. Yeah, so to paint the picture, say I'm doing push-ups. I can do 20 push-ups. I'm going to breathe in, breathe out, hold my breath, and I start doing push-ups. I hold my breath for the first 5, and then as rep 6 starts, I breathe in, and I'm probably going to try to breathe in for like rep 6, 7, and maybe a bit of 8, and then I'm going to exhale for reps 8, 9, 10. And that's me taking obviously 1 breath for those next 5 reps. And then once I finish that exhale, rep 11, I'm not stopping, it's continuous. Rep 11 starts with me holding my breath at the end of that exhale, and I do 5 reps on that breath hold, and then I finish that breath hold on rep 15. Rep 16 starts with me inhaling, and I try to recover and control my breathing to take just 1 breath, 1 inhale and exhale as I do reps 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and then breathe and try to be calm and recover your breathing nasally after that. That's just a fun little protocol I put together that gives you, I've tested out, gives you a decent level of, like, depending on how hard the exercise you choose to do is for you to do 20 of them, gives you a decent level of hypoxia created from the 2 breath holds. And what I love is that gives your brain something to think about, but also the breath, the ability to control the breath for doing those 1 breath 5 reps is really good learning and challenging, and you can build that up. I've done it with doing it with 5s. You could do it with 4 reps, like 4 4 4 4, and that would be 16. Or if once 5 is easy, you could do it 6 6 6 6 6 6. So you're doing more reps, and the breath hold is lasting for longer, and the 1 breath that you're going to take is going to be more challenging as well. So it doesn't have to be 20 reps. It doesn't have to be broken into 5 5 5 5. You could use anything from 1 up to 2 to do. And like we have played about on the Tenerife training retreat, we played about with doing it in a bit of a ladder style like that. That's everything I wanted to say about hypoxia and hypertrophy, and there's a 3-week breath hold course going on at the moment, so a number of you are involved in that. Thank you for signing up and enjoying that, and we've had some great feedback so far. I will run another one of those later this year. I don't know the dates for that yet, but it'll be done 3 weeks online again, so keep an eye out for that if you missed out. But there's loads of opportunities to come and train together. Lots of, I mentioned the certifications that are going on, but we've also got the Tenerife training retreat happening on the 21st to 24th of March. That's coming up. It's going to come up pretty soon. Fun in the sun in Tenerife whilst it's cold and horrible here in the UK, or well, depending on where you live. It certainly is here. Love getting away for that. It will be the 3rd time I think that we've run it. Breathe and Move training retreat in Tenerife with myself teaching breathing, and then with alongside fellow master instructor Oliver Wilfing, who is a capoeira coach, so he's teaching the movement side of it, but we're both trained in breath, so we like combine the breath and the movement together. We have had a couple of people had to pull out that had previously booked on, so there are spaces. I think there's 3, as I record this now, I think there's 3 spaces become available. So if you are interested, details are at probreathwork.com. I'll put a link in the show notes as well. The Tenerife training retreat is one to, but we'll do a bit of this breath holding and have a bit of fun with it. I've also got a workshop coming up on the 6th of April in Manchester. Again, that's a 1-day workshop, or just I think it's a morning workshop. Check out the details for that. Come and do. We'll be doing some breath holding. We can do a bit of everything, but we'll be doing some breath holding and some conditioning work as part of that. So have a look at those events if you're interested. Have a look at the certifications, and if you have any questions for me, you can get in touch directly via email david.jackson@oxygenadvantage.com, and I look forward to hearing from you, or hopefully seeing you at an event, or at a workshop, or at one of the certifications, or I'll see you online maybe at some of the training. So thanks for listening. I'd love to hear from you if you've been doing some breath holds with some of your resistance work. A number of you have already been feeding back. I'd love to hear from you if you haven't got back in touch yet, or if you're going to practice and integrate a little bit of breath holding into some of your own training, whether it's with resistance work, whether it's running. Just remember, if you're pregnant, no. If you've got like heart conditions or taking any like heart medications or anything serious like that, any medical conditions, then you shouldn't be doing strong breath holding. But then if you are going to start, just build like anything, build up gradually, start easy. Start with just walking, take in, breathe out, just walk for 10, 15 paces, or maybe even 5 to 10 paces. Just get comfortable with holding a breath whilst doing something very simple like walking, and then just gradually build yourself up, and have a little bit of fun with it. And notice one key thing that I always work on with the athletes that I train is work on also what happens when you finish the breath hold. When you finish the breath hold, a great opportunity for you to control the psychological, like the mental game, like, oh, I feel like I'm suffocating. Calm that chatter in the mind and calm your breathing with good mechanics when it's hard to do so. I encourage you with that for your recovery. Yeah, that was a fun podcast for me. I enjoyed that. An interest. Hopefully, you found it interesting too. Let us know if you don't subscribe yet. Favorite podcast platforms, what Spotify or wherever you want to do it. YouTube, the video is on YouTube as well. Give us a subscribe if you haven't done yet. And yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for being part of what we're trying to do. And yeah, if you have any questions or any requests for particular topics or guests or anything like that, get in touch, either Instagram or that email address, david.jackson@oxygenadvantage.com, and I look forward to hearing from you. So thanks for listening. Well done for breathing. I've been Jacko. Till next time, keep it nasal.